Hi. Now, I'd like to have a look at what has been called an integrated view of process. That is an integration between two different perspectives on doing the work. Now, this view and model of process was developed by Goldkuhl and Lind from Sweden. You can see the reference there. They were mostly concerned with business processes as opposed to production processes. The importance there is that in business processes there is a great deal more variation than there is in production processes. In production processes you set the whole production line up so that you minimize variation. But in business process, generally there's a great deal more variation that comes through than there is in a production process. Well, the situation of these processes, Goldkuhl and Lind situated them between the supplier who was performing the process and the customer of the outputs of that process. The initial model of process considered the production of the entire thing. For example, if it was a software system, they would consider the process of producing the entire software system, not the fine granularity that we would normally talk about in terms of a software process. However, as I look at it, it's a very good model and can apply, and does apply, equally well to a very fine-grained process. The same considerations are there. In this view, they considered that the supplier and the customer have to get together and agree what is to be performed before it's to be performed. What is to be supplied before it's supplied. It's no good doing something and then finding, well, sorry, we just got it wrong. There has to be some negotiation and agreement about what is to be done. Now, to that end, they found that the different views of how work was done and the different models of processes broke down into essentially 4 phases or 4 steps. First, there was the proposal where the supplier and the customer negotiated what exactly was to be produced, what exactly was to be produced, how did that affect things. This could be quite extensive or quite very straightforward. Then there was agreement about it. Now, you might think that that's just a very just a line somewhere, a point on the Gantt chart or something. And possibly it is, but let's not diminish the importance of that. Once it's agreed what is to be done and the quality levels, for example, to which it's to be done, then you actually do it. So now you do all the transformation processes and whatever activities and transformations you need to do. The last and most important thing that has to happen is you have to have some way of knowing that you're done, that you're finished, that you can stop, that you can cease this process. So you need to know whether the product is what it is supposed to be, has achieved the levels of quality that it's supposed to be, and it can be delivered. So they are the 4 parts of the process in this Goldkuhl and Lind model. You can see now in this diagram how that would be pictured if you really need pictures. And sometimes it's a really good idea to have pictures, so that's a general representation of the Goldkuhl and Lind model of process there. Now, in software development, the variation, there's always variation. There's variation even on the day, because somebody might be sick, or somebody might have been taken away to another project. You could have lost, people could be diverses. So you may not have, in the first place, enough people to do the job. You may not have enough time because the schedule has shrunk a bit. You may have misunderstood the quality levels, or you have to compensate for poor quality input in order to get the thing up to the expected level of output quality. Depending who you have or haven't got, you might have to decide or change the manner of techniques that you're doing for something. Now, this particularly in things like review practices is a pretty good one. Generally, you should review whatever you do, And depending, who knows what technique of review, you might change your mind about how you're going to do a review. If you haven't got time, you just do a peer review. If you do have time, you might do an inspection. If somebody's more comfortable with it or it's appropriate, you might do a walkthrough. But you might change your different techniques depending on the circumstance. Now, all of those things feed into the decision about what is it you're going to do this time. Who are the stakeholders for this process? Not stakeholders for the overall project, and not everybody you can think of, but who has a direct interest in this process? And what is it that they expect out of this process? How are you going to achieve that with the resources you have, the time you have, and I guess that's about it, with the resources and in the time. So that's what you have to consider in software development processes. So you have to do all this before you actually start performing the process, or before you start performing the transformations. So that, in pretty much in conclusion, that's what the Goldquill and Lind model, integrated model of process is. It's an integration between the coordination aspects of work and the transformation aspects of work. And I found it to be a very rich and useful model with which to consider and think about software development processes.